Hi, this is the Where Data Meets Business podcast, in which we discuss how data driven approaches can help you achieve business outcomes bigger, better, faster. We also talk about careers, leadership, entrepreneurship, and the people factor in data and tech. If you like what you hear, don't forget to hit subscribe and share. I'm your host, Sonia Ketkar, former academic and researcher, current consultant, data enthusiast, and forever New Yorker. I am so excited for today's episode. I have not just one guest, but two experienced leaders who are here to discuss a topic that is personal to all three of us: women in tech. Tech here defined broadly to include data science, AI, software, infrastructure, and systems. Cameron Davies is the Chief Data Officer for Yum Brands, the world's largest restaurant company. I'm sure you've heard of KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and the Habit Burger. Prior to joining Yum in 2020, Cameron spent 7 plus years with NBC Universal as SVP of Corporate Decision Sciences, where he led data strategy, including privacy and compliance, in conjunction with the advanced machine learning and AI practices. He also spent over 18 years at the Walt Disney Company, developing and leading advanced analytics teams for a variety of business areas. Kelly Dowdy is the Chief Digital and Technology Officer for Regal Cineworld, the second largest theater chain in the world. In this role, Kelly leads the company's digital and technology transformation. Prior to Regal, Kelly was SVP at Yum Brands, where she led a technology startup organization responsible for developing the next generation consumer technology platforms. She also co founded a Women in Tech ERG, creating a community to unite tech women across the brands. Additionally, Kelly held executive roles at Express Scripts, Cigna, and Boeing. Cameron, Kelly, thank you for being here and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure.
To provide some background for our listeners, where are you both joining in from?
I am joining from just north of Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I'm here in Frisco, Texas, which is a suburb just north of Dallas.
And I am joining from currently very spring like New York City. I'm not complaining. Um, another another background question. Kelly, how do you and Cameron know each other?
Cameron and I met during our time at Yum. I think it was when I joined the company in 2020. I think, Cam, you were already there. We joined right around the same time to really help kind of work on the digital transformation and get that off the ground for Yum. So we worked together for about 5 years, Cam? Yeah,
Yep.
about 5 years. Yeah.
Cameron, when I first approached you about being on this podcast, from the long list of experiences and achievements that you have accumulated over your career, whether it is building and growing successful analytics teams or driving change and data transformations at large global brands, you wanted to spotlight this particular topic of women in tech. Clearly, you care deeply about it, and you have indeed actively supported women's careers, including mine. I'd love to know more about your passion around advocating for female leadership. What's the driving force?
Sure. No, it's, as you know, Sonia, this is a very deeply personal subject for me. And it goes back for me almost 40 some years, where um, early in my undergrad career, in my very first data programming class, I met this beautiful young brunette who was sitting behind me, who I was so enamored with. After chasing her for 4 years, I made her my wife, and now we've been married for almost 35 years. And, Kimbo was brilliant. She was a brilliant programmer. And I watched her go through her college career, graduate as the only female in a class of 250 in her space, get recruited into electronic data systems, go to large companies like AT&T, eventually follow me into academia, and then after a number of years, just say, that's it, I'm done. I know I'm good at this, but I just lost my passion for it. And that loss of passion largely had to do with how she was being treated and respected by her peers. And I watched how it happened. And she would come home and tell me these stories, and I would just get angry and disturbed about it. I'm like, this just isn't right. And, she went away for a while and she tried to take a path back in later on. And during Y2K as a COBOL programmer, when everybody was desperate for them. So I really did just show everybody my age. We had a chance. They were begging her to come back, and she did an interview, and she came back. She's like, "Nope, it hasn't changed." It was a panel interview with 4 males, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm not going back into that. That was the most disrespectful I've ever been treated in an interview." And she's never gone back, and it's always saddened me, and it's always become a passion point for me, that how we think about women in tech, how we think about diversity, how we make sure that we treat people with respect, that everybody feels welcome, everybody feels valued, and everybody feels respected. So it's a pretty personal passionate point for me.
That must have been really hard for her and for you as well. Kelly, you are a female leader at the top of your career chart. What has your experience been like from a career perspective as a woman in tech with respect to getting opportunities or, some of the issues that Cameron talked about?
You know, the story that Cameron told about what his wife experienced, it resonates so deeply with me. Have very similar experiences throughout kind of my career, but really throughout my whole life. I'm an athlete, so I played baseball, and I was the only girl in the league for up till the age of 12. And that felt lonely at times. That felt slighted because I was a female, playing with all boys when there was no softball league for me to play in. Getting in the tech world, it was kind of no different, but it didn't get any easier, right? Even though I had that experience kind of in my childhood and even in my teenage years, it never gets easier. And I think for me, there were times absolutely I wanted to quit. I thought, I questioned, am I even talented? Can I even do this? As a woman, and I'm married and I've got 2 kids, you have life experiences. Giving birth is a life experience, and that changes a lot of things for a woman, a man too, but from a woman's standpoint, it changes a whole lot. And the only reason that I was able to kind of get to where I am in my career is honestly male advocates along the way, male support systems along the way. Cameron is one of those, but I have several critical male peers, coworkers, leaders that I worked for directly, that when I was at my lowest, they would pick me up, they would support me. They would reach out to me and say, "Hey, are you okay?" They just knew I needed that instead of me always going to them. And that means a lot, especially in tech when there's not a lot of women. And I had a few women that were, we always rallied together to support each other through things, and we could talk at a very deep level. But it was because there's so many men in the field. I'm just so appreciative of the men that proactively cared and listened and helped me kind of through my journey, especially at those dark moments where I may be being judged differently because I'm a female. And I was sitting in a room once with another, bunch of executive women, and the speaker had us raise our hands. Who here has been told that you are too direct? And literally every hand shot up. It's like, well, who here think that's a limiting factor? And every hand shot up because that's what we're told. And we have to change ourselves, and we're never good enough. And so I just publicly want to thank Cameron for all his support for me when we worked together, and just everybody else in my career. But that's really made a huge difference for me.
I can relate to that. And actually, recent statistics show that women comprise only about 25% of the tech workforce. And this disparity is even more pronounced in leadership positions where women hold only 11% of executive roles. So, it's like seems to be that's what it is right now. So, Cameron, how do you change these numbers? How do you develop female leadership? Are there any unique tools that they need, and how do you get those to them?
That it really is the question, because it's funny to watch some folks today act like this is the first time we've ever had these conversations, but the reality is we've been having them for years, and we haven't figured it out exactly right. We just expanded the population that is covered in the conversations, and rightfully so. Um, and I've always been a firm believer that, like, one of the biggest challenges to making somebody feel comfortable is making sure they're not the only in the room. And I've been in those situations. Like, oh, you're a male. Like, no, I've been in a room with 15 females. I've been the only male, and went, oh, so this is what it feels like. right? This is what it feels like, right? Or been the only Caucasian person in a room full of 25 brown or black skinned people and go like, oh, this is what it feels like, right? This is good. This is a good experience for me to become empathetic and understand this. And so I think the number one thing we can do is increase the size of the funnel. Number one, we've got to increase the size of the funnel and encourage, especially women, and like that. This is a good choice if this is the choice you want to make. It's not the only choice, right? But you can do it, and encourage the math and the science skills early on in a positive way, and have continue to put positive role models in front of them. I think I've introduced over the years both of you to like the Wilda community. And it's because it's such a great way to show like this is what really talented female leadership looks like. And as much as we can advocate, how can you guys represent and start the funnel? I think that's number one. Number two is being aware of it, right? And making sure that we do recognize it when it happens and say, hey, like, how do we make sure this isn't the case? How do we reach out proactively and say, hey, like, let's make sure you get heard, right? To Kelly's example of being told you're too direct. Usually that happens when somebody feels like their voice isn't being heard, right? And so how do we, and I find that in those leadership positions, if you proactively solicit, then all of a sudden your directs that are the onlys or the fews stop getting that feedback, which is really interesting, right? They didn't change their behavior necessarily. We changed our behavior to making sure that we included them and asked for their voice. And therefore, they didn't feel like they had to shout it out there. So they had the opportunity. And I think those are the two big ones. I mean, we could go on and on and on with a list of things. But for me, those are always the big two ones that I see actually have an impact. I'm encouraged by what we're starting to see in the funnel, but I still think we have a long ways to go.
I'd love to build on that. I think both of those I 100% agree with. I think the proactiveness is a really key one for women and for me personally. And I'll give a story to help hopefully
Mm.
elaborate for the audience. Like if you're a leader out here, here's what a leader did for me that like meant the world to me. So this was a couple of companies ago, but there was an executive role open, and I'd only been at the company for 4 months. And my boss comes to me and says, "Hey, this role is opened. Would you be interested in interviewing for it?" And my immediate answer, it was a promotion. My immediate answer was, "Oh no, I'm not ready for that. I'm not qualified." And the mental model I had was, "Well, I just got to this company. I've only been here 3 or 4 months. Clearly, I'm not qualified." So I took myself out of the race. And I think a lot of times as women, we take ourselves out of the race, right? We're like, well, I'm not 100% qualified. Well, I've only been here 3 months. Well, I don't know if I could do it. I've never done that before. And that was my response. Here's what I love that happened next. My boss went back and told the CIO, hey, Kelly, she's not interested. And the CIO, I wasn't in the room, but this is what I found out afterwards. He told him, no. You need to tell Kelly she needs to interview. And that was his way of saying, like, you're ready. We want you. We see it. And you have to think if a leader puts you in that position, like the leader wants to be successful. So why am I discounting myself whenever he thinks I'm ready and he's the CIO? So my boss comes back to me. He's like, hey, so do you want to reconsider? I think you should. And I was still like, no, I'm not qualified. I don't know if I've ever done that. And then he finally goes to me because he learned me. He's like, well, why don't you just interview for the experience? I think that would be really good. And he knew that I loved like learning. And so my response to him was, yeah, that's a great idea. Then I can find out all of my gaps that I need to fix so I am ready for it. Once again, discounting myself. Long story short, I get to the end of the process and I was one of the top two candidates, and they actually ended up offering me a similar role. Um, which was amazing. But once again, I took myself out of the running multiple times because of my own imposter syndrome, and because of my own excuses, because of what was told to me in the past that I still held on as the truth. And it really took two male advocates that saw something in me and pushed me to believe in myself and pushed me to try and take these opportunities. And I am forever grateful of that.
I love that.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you whether there were any pivotal moments, that created or did maybe decisions that you made or mentorship or other tools that you got that helped you reach that inflection point where you take a big leap forward and you touched upon one of them. Anything more that you comes to mind that you want to add, even if it's like more general or for other women that you've seen?
Yeah, I think the other one is I call it a blind spot mentor. And actually, little known secret, Cameron was mine at my prior company. And every company I've been to, I've had one. But for me, this was someone that I deeply trusted, that knew me as a person and knew my capabilities. And I could go to them and say, ask them any question, and they could give me unbiased coaching and feedback to help me without judgment, to help me on my journey. There's several times I'd be like, hey, was that too direct? And, even Cam would be like, well, I think this was good. But maybe like over here, like just know your audience a little bit. You know what I mean? I think the reaction was a little bit this, and give me like constructive feedback and coaching without the judgment, right? Without the, well, you're a woman, so therefore you need to do this. And there were times I'm like, I think that was too direct. Like, nope, that was spot on. That is how you needed to relay that message. That is how you needed to communicate, so on and so forth. So I think for me, every company, especially in an executive role, like I'm always looking to improve as a leader. I think we all are. And having because I'm mostly in rooms with males, but having a person in that's in a lot of rooms with me that I can trust, that can give me that feedback and support me and give me that kind of real time coaching has just been invaluable for me. And it builds my confidence too. I think I second guess myself even to this day a lot, just because of what I've experienced in the past, being kind of the woman, the only woman in the room. And so that's been tremendously helpful for me.
Yeah, and Cameron, you talked about increasing the size of the funnel, and we talked about mentorship, coaching, inclusivity, and so on. So, being able to provide resources and tools to individuals to apply on their own or to have somebody who is pushing them to apply those, that's one thing. But not everybody is on the same page, right? So, this is this is a difficult question, if you will, but how do you get others to support that? Like, let's say you're sitting in a conference room making key decisions or working on a project as a team, and how do you actually bring those diverse points of view to work well together and get support for that?
Yeah, I think two things have to be true. And this goes to both you as a leader and the company culture. And again, I think Kelly would tell you I'm a huge advocate of culture, and culture being not just what you say, but who you reward and the behaviors you accept. That's what defines your culture. And I recently had a young woman in my home, but I've known this young lady since she was 3 years old. We vacationed with her family. She grew up with my daughter. She was in my daughter's wedding. Like I'm close to this young lady. She works for a Fortune 10 company. I'll just leave it at that. And is about 10 years into her professional career. It's not tech, but it's associated. And as we were sitting one night with my daughter while she was here, she was telling me a story she recently had with her boss and how some things he had said to her, including instead of taking her out of his office, walking her to a private part of the building, a deserted part of the building, to then yell at her about something. And I'm listening to some of these behaviors and I am losing my mind. And my first response is like, you HR, you've got to go to HR. You've got to talk to them. This is what they're there for. And imagine my shock when she's like, I can't do that. Our HR is terrible. Our HR is terrible. It would just be me against him, and then my career would be ruined. And my heart just broke. My heart just broke, it and I'm so grateful, like because I can guarantee you, all my time at Disney, all my time at Comcast, my time at Yum, that is not the culture. That is absolutely not the culture. And there's something about this company that this young person, this young woman, young female professional who's very good at what she does, feels like she doesn't feel the freedom to even call balls and strikes. And so it's got to start with a company culture thing. And you've got to not just say it, you have to prove it. You have to prove it in how you act and how you reward and how you deal with situations. And so I think that's one thing. It's so important because nothing we do as leaders individually are going to overcome that. And I will, it's not supposed to necessarily be about our companies today, but Yum is amazing at that. Yum is incredibly amazing at that. And then the second thing, it goes back to as a leader, stopping, listening, and then asking and pulling those opinions in. Because what starts to happen is you model that behavior, then people, oh, okay, that's what my leader expects. That's what he sees. That's what she sees. Okay, we want all voices to be heard, all levels to be heard. And that's such a big piece of all of it, to start creating it and then say it and then reward the people who do it.
Kelly, I know you spent some time at Yum, as you mentioned previously, and you were involved with an employee resource group related to women in tech. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, when I joined Yum in 2020, I joined a team and I was the only in the room in the most part, right? The only female in tech, and um, I worked at kind of Yum corporate at the center, and I'd go to the brands, and we were partnering with the brands on kind of building technology, and I met some amazing women in tech at one of our brands, and I said, "Hey, like, do you all know anybody at Yum corporate or at the other brands?" And it was like, "Well, no, we don't know anybody." And like, it's like, all right, we've got to. There's not many of us. We've got to get together. We've got to start this community because we have shared experiences. We can help each other out. We can learn together, grow together, shadow each other, etc. And so we formed a women in tech ERG. And at my previous company, actually, we did the same thing. I was one of the champions of it. Um, but the whole purpose of it and our mission statement was to inspire, grow, and champion women's careers in technology, not just within Yum and the four brands, but external to Yum as well. To Cameron's point, the pipeline is so important. And so the Inspire piece for us was reaching into our communities. We did high school STEM events, right? We did some college campus events to really inspire that next generation, the ones that we wanted to fill our shoes, that this is a great career field to be in, and a needed one for women to be in. Growing was really, hey, we've got amazing women and men at this company who have amazing skill sets. How do we share that? How do we grow each other just by peer to peer kind of teaching and education? And the team I was leading, I had some amazing male leaders under me that stepped up. And they're like, hey, I would love to have it was kind of like an SRE university, like site reliability engineering. And the engineers on the team put together curriculum, and the first people that they offered spots in this kind of college, so to speak, curriculum was the women in tech group, and then they expanded it out, and I love that. It was, let's have us and the expert teach others, and that opened up doors. We actually were able to rotate some women into new career fields because they went to this university and they got certified, and then they got mentored, and they started in just kind of a new career role, and I absolutely love that. And then the last piece was the champion piece. And to Cameron's point, there's only so much you can do at the lower levels. And we did a lot, but it was really going to take leadership at all levels to help to one, just be aware of the talent across the organization, which there was very limited awareness. And Cameron was one of them. I had many executive leaders volunteer to do, we called it mentor her, and these women could just sign up for a 30-minute mentoring session with an executive leader, a meet and greet, ask questions, get some mentoring. And often these sessions went for an hour. Just the conversation was so great. And in a couple of cases, some leaders shamelessly stole talent from parts of the organization. We like to call it rotational talent, and opening up new career opportunities. But that was fantastic and amazing. And I think, at the 5 years I was at Yum, the women in that group felt like they had a community, felt seen, felt grown and developed at a global scale, which was so, so powerful.
If I could just build on that for a minute, Sonia, it is, if you I had a boss or a mentor early on in my career at Disney who said, look, if you want to really understand what people think about you, it's about what they're going to say about you when you're not in the room, and have no expectation that you'll ever hear what they say. That always landed home with me. And if you want to know Kelly's impact, this idea of having somebody who's passionate about it, a senior female lead, roll it up and get really great support. When Kelly left us to go pursue her next big thing, the number of female tech talent who picked up the phone and called me and said, what are we going to do, Cam? What are we going to do? Kelly's gone and we're going to miss her. And she was our advocate and she was our champion. And the good news is I could say to them, hey, look, this was always bigger than Kelly. The culture of our company is great and Kelly's helped set that. So we're going to be in a good place, and we are, and it's extended and people are in a good place. But the impact she had on the organization, right? It speaks to the impact on the organization. And if you are a female leader, there's something that you can do that no male leader can right now. And that's have that champion impact. I can say it all I want. I really can. But the reality is, I once had one of my employees ask me, like, Cameron, what are you doing to recruit young females? And I could say, like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. But, and I can lay that out. So can I flip it back to you? What are you doing? And how can I help you do it? Because that's the question I want to ask. And so, as we think about your audience today, if you're out there as a female in tech, executive, director, VP, SE, like, what can you do? That's how you can start to have an impact in the organization. I'm sure Kelly would be happy to take the call. Like, how did we go about that journey, and really broaden it and think about it in such a way that it's a lasting legacy?
The story that you were telling previously about the young lady, your daughter's friend, I needed a minute to absorb that, right? Because it was pretty moving. And you also talked about how at the organizations that you worked in, Yum, Disney, Comcast, etc., that was not the culture. So if somebody is looking to create a positive work environment for female leaders, what would you tell them they should focus on in addition to widening the funnel?
Yeah, I think number one, be bold and call it. It's hard. It's hard to be courageous. It really is. Um, and it's easy to be, we call it courageous when there's no cost. And this was like, it was hard for this young lady. But my advice to her was like, look, I hear you. And I'm not going to do anything about this, although I actually knew a couple of people involved. But I promised I wouldn't make any phone calls. I wouldn't do anything. But my advice to her is like, look, you sort of owe it to yourself and you owe it to the organization to do the right thing. No, you make your call. You make your call as to what that is. And that'd be my advice to all of us across the organization. Number one, like, we set the standard. We set the standard. If you see it, because I can guarantee you, and I have done this in my past, I have observed situations where I'm like, yeah, we're not going to be that kind of company. And I like, but Cameron, that had nothing to do with you. I'm like, it has everything to do with me because I work here. It has everything to do with me because this is the culture I want to be a part of. And I represent this company, and this company represents me. So first of all, it's everybody's responsibility. And I just encourage that. Like, if you want to make sure that all voices are welcome, everybody feels comfortable, then we all need to go do it. And in today's current political environment, it's really get whacked out about a bunch of this stuff. And that's not what it's about. It's about respect, and it's about welcoming people and opinions and acting in the right way. And so that's first and foremost. And honestly, if you're not at a company that's doing that and you do that and it's not making changes, get out. Because there are plenty of companies, there are plenty of cultures, there are plenty of really great talented and leaders, and life is too short and no career is worth it. On your exit interview, you let them know. You let them know exactly why and what they do with it. But those would be like my top two things, which is personal accountability, and then don't put up with it. There's just no need.
Kelly, I know you agreed with Cameron there, but anything else you want to add to?
I think it's perfectly said. Culture is the people. And I think everybody has a voice. And I know not every voice can move the needle, but collective voices can. and getting your voice to a leader of influence can as well. So just understanding that and not being afraid to do that. And then I think if you are a leader, you have a bigger responsibility. You cannot be silent. You need to represent the team and and hold the line on what the culture should be. Um, and if you cannot, and you find yourself in an environment where the culture seems to be collapsing in on you, then honestly, I think one of the best indicators you can do is to leave. Because there, unfortunately, I've worked for great companies as well. Yum is one of those, and so I've not left companies because of that. I've never been in that type of situation, but I know of people that have, and I same advice that, Cameron said. If it gets to that point and you can't move and you've spoken to a leader of influence and it's not changing, then sometimes the best signal to the organization is for you to go.
Yeah, good advice for people who are listening. So let's talk about everybody's current favorite topic, AI. It has created a whole new set of requirements, not just for data and technology departments, but pretty much any role. The Harvard Business School released an article in February which claimed that I'm going to read this out. Women are adopting generative AI technology at a significantly lower rate than men, in many cases because women question whether it's ethical to use the tools and may fear they will be judged harshly in the workplace for relying on them. There are other studies which show that this is not necessarily true for women in tech, but to some degree, with the advent of AI and previously digital, most roles today have some data or technology in them anyway. What do you think organizations need to do so that women are not left behind as AI infiltrates pretty much every inch of our work lives?
I remember having conversations at Disney years ago. This was a lot of years ago, um, when the first iPhone released. And a lot of us were walking around still with Blackberries, and some still had pagers. And the question on the table was, well, it's a lot of money to buy one of these things. Like, what's the payback? What's the payback? And we had all sorts of conversations around it. And sitting here almost 20 years later, I don't know about you all, like the amount of productivity that happens in this little device in my hand right now and the way it connects with my iPad, I can't imagine not having it. Right. And this was a day when we didn't even have laptops in everybody's hands. It was just a desktop. Now, there was an advantage when you disconnected. So maybe we shouldn't get too enamored of it. But my point being is, it's a technology that just completely changed how we all worked and interacted. I believe the same thing about AI. And it's sort of my job to change that culture at the company and continue to drive it. And we're doing that. We're doing it with the way we have full access, um, for Copilot for all of our employees, above store restaurant owners. We have GPT licenses and our own instance for people to do it. We've now started what we call AI Academy, where we're literally training people and encourage them how to use these tools, because we believe very firmly it's going to be a key to productivity. And Kelly can probably talk about this because she manages a whole army of engineers. And if you're not using auto coding, pilot coding, you're going to get left behind. And so I think number one, like, we need to encourage everybody to do it, and we need to enable it in the most effective way possible. When I find companies like, wait a minute, you guys still don't have a private instance of a GPT or a like, what are you doing? Right. And when you get people trained on it, they use it. I use it every day. Right? And it's funny, you've got to get rid of the stigma. You got to get rid of the stigma on it and say, in fact, I start asking people, did you use it for this? And they're like, whoa. I'm like, you should have, right? I use it every day. When I do something, like, hey, by the way, I did it with this, because it made it twice as fast. And I get it, because if you struggle with some insecurity in the way you're built anyway, right? And this natural piece, and you naturally have imposter syndrome, that just makes you feel worse. And so we need to proactively encourage it for everybody. We need to put it in everybody's hands, and we almost need to monitor. We actually have now, we've gamified it, and we'll actually start looking at like top users and literally praising people for doing it. And that's what we're trying to do, to put it, just change the culture of the organization. And I think you've got to do that. And if you do it right, then it becomes a badge of honor. And then it doesn't matter, male, female, it won't matter. And so you've got to just change it for everybody. If you just try to address one unit, I don't think it will be impactful. I think you've got to do it across.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I love what you said, Cameron, of from a woman's perspective, linking it to productivity. Women, as women, we love to be productive. Like, wait, I've got my checklist. I want to cross things off. I want to go, go, go. And I use it every single day too for everything unimaginable. It is truly my co-pilot. And it no longer feels like cheating. I think a lot of women, there's this sense of like, oh, well, like it's cheating. It's not authentically me. Like, it's like, no, no, no. This is helping you do all the research, all the thinking, everything really, really, really fast. And then your brain still needs to round up on whatever it is, still needs to figure out how do we apply this. And I tell that to people all the time, that's what it's for. To Cameron's point, it's productivity across everything that you're doing. And then the second piece, I love the idea of the AI Academy. I think there's still a large cohort of folks who are intimidated by it. Because honestly, when I first started learning how to do prompt engineering, it was a little bit confusing. Well, what do I put in there and how do you know what I mean? But now I'm a prompt engineering wizard and I'm always looking at like cheat codes and there's all these posts on LinkedIn. Here are the best prompts that you should use all the time. And I've got those tagged. But I think the more that we can get that out and educate each other, the less scary it is, the less like that wall of understanding of like how to use it and what are the use cases to use it for. That burns, and then people are like, oh, if I can use it for this, then I can use it for this, and then I can use it for this. And of course, we won't get into policy and what's dangerous about it in this podcast. But I think that's kind of where it starts, especially for women. We like to do things like, I don't want to say the hard way, but we want to be authentic in everything that we do. I feel like a lot of times that is the core of like what a woman is. It's grit, it's authenticity, it's get that through that checklist. And if you, as women, if you're like, if this can help you do all that so much faster. And oh, by the way, if ChatGPT gives you a result, just ask for source information. Be like, yeah, I got this from Gartner. And it happens that I got it through ChatGPT, but the source was actually Gartner. And I actually did something like that just the other day. So,
Yeah. Just to build on that a little bit more, like I have a really good friend, Nij Chawla, and I've known Nij for a number of years, and he used to use an example, and so I ripped it off because I love it so much. But I'm going to give him props because this is not originally Cameron, and his example is Tony Stark. And there's this sort of line in the first Avengers movie where he and like Steve Rogers are having an argument, and Steve Rogers like, big man in a suit, what are you without it? And Tony quips back, billionaire, playboy, genius, philanthropist. Right. And it's this sort of funny line in the movie. But Tony's point is like, that was pretty amazing before the suit. So thank you very much. But he wasn't a superhero. You put the superhero, you put the suit on him, you put the Jarvis suit on him, and you put the Iron Man suit on him, and all of a sudden, this really amazing person became a superhero. And that's how we like to think about it, quite candidly, is we're putting like voice AI in drive-through and AI coaches in restaurants. Like our whole point is like, look, we want to make really talented people superheroes. So this is an enablement technology, not a replacement technology. That's what it's designed to do. And what we're giving you is a suit. Like we're giving you a superhero suit. Who doesn't want to step into that? And that's what the AI should be. And especially for junior people coming up in their career, to Kelly's point, it shouldn't feel inauthentic anymore. Because it's only as good as the person using it.
yeah, I love that. I'm an engineer by trade, very much ones and zeros math, not a creative. I've made some pretty awesome icons recently. I'm not gonna lie, and images with that. I'm like, yeah, look what I did. Look how awesome I am. I am now a marketer.
Oh, now she's getting carried away.
No, but I like the superhero analogy. That was really helpful. Before we conclude, just one question for each of you, and Kelly, we can start with you. What advice would you give women who are working in tech but struggling to get to a leadership position? They're just not able to sort of make that jump, what would you tell them?
Find a male advocate. I guarantee there's a male advocate around the room that believes in you, that can help you, that can open doors for you. Um, and what I tell once you find that male advocate, one of the things that I firmly believe has really helped develop me, and I have all of my leaders do this with their team, is it's the 70-20-10 development model. 70% of your development is just on the job experiences. So what can that leader help with you with? Just being in the room listening to a presentation to the CFO because you want to learn about more of financials and the question and how you do budgeting. What are some maybe roles or side gigs you can play or special projects you can work on because you want to build that skill? It's 75% of that learning comes from actually being in the room, doing things hands on. 20% comes from people you know that can help mentor you and figuring out like what are those gaps to get to the next level, where do you need to grow, and finding the expert that does that, that can just teach you everything you know. I'm at a new company now, and I know absolutely nothing about projections, hardware and software. And I went in and told the team I'm at like a kindergarten level of understanding. My goal is to get to a third grade level of understanding by the end of Q1. Who do I need to talk to in the entire organization? Like, who can teach me this key skill set? And I did. I found amazing people that walked me through how lamps work and stuff like that. So I think that's 20%. And then 10%, and it's really only 10%, comes from formal education and training. I think a lot of times we feel like that's where most of the learning comes, and we can do that on our own. So we can control that. So we pour a ton of time into that. I can tell you I've learned way more and built more skill sets in the other two areas than formal training did.
Thanks. Cameron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think my advice would be the same for anybody, quite candidly, which is two things. Which is number one, check your fit. Check your fit.
Mhm.
If you're not progressing as fast as you think you should or could be, then evaluate: are you in the right role for who you are, what your talents are, what your desires are? And each of you, I think both of you at some point is like, hey, what's Cameron's 20-60-20? You guys could articulate that because you understand what I mean, because we've had those conversations over the years about understanding things you're really good at, things you enjoy, and things that you want to go do. Even female or male, as an example, I know both of you on this call fairly well, and you're both female. You have very different personalities, believe it or not. You're both very type A, you're both very driven, but you both have very distinctly different personalities, which is great. You're both amazing women. But like, you and Kelly would probably not enjoy the same roles, quite candidly, given what I know about you both. And so like, you got to make sure, male, female, am I in the right role, doing the right thing, or am I just doing the thing that I've been told I should do or think I should do, and breaking out of it? And that's number one. And then I would just drop into Kelly's too. Like, make sure you've got the right support structure or mentoring system around you that can give you, most of all, that really direct feedback. So you got to have a relationship of trust to do that, to Kelly's point. And I love that she did that with me. I have that same thing. There's people you can bounce off and like, okay, call balls and strikes on me. And when you do that, I will just listen to that, and I will be willing to accept it, because then I got to tell you, the flip side is that person for Kelly. Kelly never once came back at me. Now, I am sure I said things she didn't necessarily agree with. I'm 100% sure of that, because, even I'm not perfect all the time. It's sad. It's hard as that is to believe, but it's not. But Kelly always just listened and took it. And so I always felt safe to say what I really felt to her and give her the feedback and let her take with it as she should. So many people don't do that. And when I find people aren't progressing, it's because honestly, sometimes they don't want to hear the message on what it is, and like, hear that like, maybe this isn't a great fit for you. And if we got you in the right role, you could really progress and do great. And so um, those are the two things that I would say.
Got it. Thank you. Kelly, Cameron, this was a great, deep, insightful, actionable conversation, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining. Please share and subscribe to not miss an episode. See you next time.